it seems to me that there's already been some divisiveness just in having the city council bring this issue to the people to vote on, because other city councils have actually voted on it themselves and not given it over to the people. So it seems to me there's already some kind of division here, and perhaps there's not enough clarity or agreement among city council as to what is the proper action to take on it. So maybe it's just not the appropriate thing to be looking at this time.
Next question.
Statement. My name is Mark.
I'm informed we are allowing statements, so I apologize to the gentleman for cutting you off.
No.
Fire away.
My name is Mark Smith, born and raised for a while in Michigan. If this were Dearborn, Michigan, it would be in Allah we trust up there, and it would have been voted by a majority of the people in Dearborn, just to let you know how it would feel. In God we trust, but whose God? Will that be put to a vote as well? It is not the God of the Jews. Their God is not 1/3 of some trinity. It is not the God of the Muslims. Their God is not the author of the New Testament. It is not the God of the Mormons. Their God has a physical body and lives on the planet Kolob. It is not the God of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Their God is not a part of the Trinity. It is not the God of the Buddhists. Are Asians now unwelcomed to live in Villa Park? It is not the God of the Hindus. Are people from Bombay also unwelcomed to live here now? This God is not the God of many good religious people, and would be a public slap in the face to them every time they enter this room. Don't be rude to them. Don't make this into a wedge. Vote no on AA. Thank you.
Thank you. Either of you like a minute to...
Well, I think I answered your question before you made your statement. Which God?
All right.
Good evening. I'm Lori Stewart, and I live here in Villa Park. And I'm thankful that we're able to have this forum and have this discussion. I think it's really important that although people might have a variety of viewpoints on an issue, it's important that we do maintain civil discourse, because that's what this country is all about. At one point in my life, I bought the idea of separation of church and state until I went to law school and I started to do research for a paper on the First Amendment. And like you seem to be well versed. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Eddie, yeah.
I didn't want to be so familiar as to refer
That's okay.
to you by your first name, but I did the research as to the discussion that went into the formulation, the final words of the Bill of Rights, and specifically the First Amendment. And so I guess I would kind of have a question for you, for any of the gentlemen on the panel, is how can we use this idea of separation of church and state to try to find that it is unconstitutional to have any kind of expression of religion in the public square, when, first of all, Thomas Jefferson didn't use that phrase until 1802, which was well after a decade that the Bill of Rights was passed, and we had the language for the First Amendment. So the separation of church and state idea, which Jefferson articulated in a letter, by the way, like 13, 14 years after the fact, my math's about 13 years maybe after the fact, did not weigh in at the time of the language of the First Amendment. So that's one question. And the second part would be, as I did my research, and here's what changed my mind on this issue, because I think our government is great, and I wanted to know what started this fantastic system of government that we have in our country. It was indeed Madison who who proposed the first language for the Establishment Clause. The language that he first proposed was, "The civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established, nor any full and equal rights of conscience be in any manner or on any pretext infringed." So it's very clear that what he was saying is, we do not want to compel people to believe one way. We do not want to insist on having one government, is very clear here, a national religion. Now, there was some discussion in the House, and so Madison commented upon the discussion and says he apprehended the meaning of the words that were being discussed to mean that the Congress shall not establish a religion and enforce the legal observation of it by law, nor compel men to worship God in any manner contrary to their conscience. So the First Amendment Establishment Clause clearly has to do with forbidding the establishment of a national religion and allowing free conscience, free worship, free exercise of religious beliefs. And you alluded to the original pilgrims that came over to this country. They came over to escape religious persecution. And what I see happening today in contemporary times, we actually are kind of reverting back to persecuting people of faith and not allowing them to even express a point of view that might be contrary to somebody else. I'm all for the democratic process, and although I'm not a Muslim, if the majority of people in Villa Park decided they wanted to have Allah, in Allah we trust, I believe that that's the right of the community to decide. We have ways of voting, and we can talk to each other, try to change each other's minds. So I think that's part of the democratic process. So I do want to ask you both those questions: is how can we find that separation of church and state is a valid concern when addressing constitutional issues, and how can we even find that really claiming that the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, in any way says we need to keep religion just in the churches, in the homes, and totally out of the public square at all?
Well, the way to answer that is there are a number of ways of wording the same thing. To say no law respecting an establishment of religion, government neutrality in matters of religion, and separation of church and state are the same things. Now, if you look at Madison's comments before he drafted the First Amendment from the fall of 1788 onward, concerned about the equal rights of the infidel, that does not mean that government could favor the believer over the non-believer. And the most settled point of First Amendment law is that whatever the First Amendment means, it's not subject to majority rule, so that if a majority of Muslims in a community wanted to say one nation or one city under Allah, they couldn't do it even if it was 100% of them, because you're speaking about a branch of government. So even before we get to what the First Amendment means, we have to establish that whatever it means, its religion clauses are not amenable to government making a pronouncement reflecting the majority viewpoint. Now, if you look at Madison's concern for the infidel and for the equal rights of conscience, and you look at Madison's comments, what Madison wanted was for the Bill of Rights to apply to the states, but he was shot down on that, and that didn't come about until the states ratified the 14th Amendment in 1868. And then if you look at Madison's original formulation, but the final result, no law respecting an establishment of religion, you could see that the Congress intentionally broadened the prohibition. But the most telling point was that on September 3rd of 1789, the Senate twice rejected proposed amendments that would have only stopped government from favoring one belief over others. And if that's all that the First Amendment meant, then that language would have remained in there. And as far as people expressing their religious ideas, everyone is free to express their religious ideas. We just don't believe that they can use government to do so. So I cannot ask the Los Angeles City Council to pass a resolution saying we find there is no God, because that would be unconstitutional, and it equally means that it would be unconstitutional for the city of Villa Park to indicate its belief in a deity. Both would be wrong. But that doesn't stop me as an individual from saying there is no God or there's only a Jewish God, and that doesn't stop the Christian from saying there is a God and it's a Christian God. So the fact that neither of us can invoke the machinery of government to be our spokesperson doesn't mean our freedoms are denied.